In today's video, we are going to create a stuffed animal in our embroidery machine. Hello, my name is Mary with Sewing for Madison. Crafting is my passion, and I love helping others learn how simple and easy it can be. I'm so excited about our project today. We are going to make this cute, adorable stuffed unicorn. This design is from one of my favorite designers, Ohana Applique Designs. Their stuffies far exceed other designers. You have to check them out. It doesn't matter if you are new to embroidery or you've been embroidering for several years. The thought of making a stuffed animal with your embroidery machine can be very intimidating. Believe me, I understand. I've been there and I've been embroidering now for 7 years. This will be my first video in my stuffed animals series. We're going to start out talking about the simplest stuffed animal that's done all in one single hooping. I'm going to be using a single needle embroidery machine. However, this design can be done with a multi-needle machine as well. This design, when you purchase it from Ohana Applique Designs, comes in a multitude of sizes. You'll get the 4x4, the 5x7, 6x10, 7x12, and 8x12. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to use the 6x10 size stuffy today. Let's go over the supplies that we're going to need for today's project. First, you will need to choose your fabrics. This design has many different pieces of fabric in it. You're going to choose one piece for the body of the animal, and then there's a few applique pieces in there as well. I'm going to use this white minky for the main body piece, and then I'm going to use a piece of fur at the top, and this 4-way stretch material for the horn, and lastly a piece of applique for the belly and one for the snout. Let's talk about the stabilizers you need. I prefer to use a light to medium weight tearaway stabilizer in my hoop, and then a water soluble topper for working with the minky and the fur. You'll see why using a water-soluble topper is important later on in this video. After hooping our stabilizer, let's head over to the machine to start step number 1. Since we are working with minky, there is a direction that the minky fabric actually goes in. So you may need to take your hand and smooth it over the material so that you know what direction your pile goes in and that you don't make your stuffed animal upside. So step number 1. Place your fabric pretty side up, and if using a material like minky, place your water soluble stabilizer. Step 2, placement stitch for hair tuft. Okay, now we are going to place our fur down. I get a little bit of the pink in there as well. And then I'm going to grab one more layer of water-soluble topper. And you'll see why in just a second. So now we are going to do step number 3, and we're going to tack this hair down in place. Okay, I'm going to remove my hoop. I'm going to use my curved applique scissors and trim around very carefully all around this fur, making sure that I do not cut into the stitch edge. Some people also prefer to use an X-Acto blade on this method. Use whatever is easiest for you when working with the fur. All right, here is one tip. If you're working with a product that has a lot of loose fur, like this one, grab your handy little dust spray, and before you put your hoop back into your machine, just spray off those fuzzy pieces. That way they're not going to go down into your machine and get your machine clogged. Step number 4, placement stitch for horn. Step number 5. You're going to float that pretty fabric on top of your horn and then secure that down. Now, since I'm using that 4-way stretch material, I am actually going to tape this one down because it has a tendency to move around on the water soluble topper. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my Scotch tape, and I am going to tape that right above to my hoop edge. And a big long piece right across the bottom. Okay, and 2 on the sides. If you're not using a 4-way stretch material, you don't have to go to this extent, but this one's very slippery on a very slippery surface, so I want to make sure it does not move. Okay, step number 5, you're going to tack down that horn. Okay, we are going to remove our hoop and we're going to trim all the way around that horn. Step number 6, placement stitch for snout. Step 7, float your fabric choice over the snout and run step 7 tack down stitch. Remove your hoop and trim around the snout. Step number 8, placement stitch for belly applique. Step number 9, float the fabric choice pretty side up and secure, then trim. Step number 10, satin stitch around the belly applique. Step number 11, satin stitch around snout. Step number 12, satin stitch around the hair. So you can see here why the water soluble topper is important. So I left it here. It's going to satin stitch over this edge here and then also in the middle. If I didn't have the water soluble stabilizer here, the stitching would not lay out correctly over this fur. You'd have fur popping through, so this is where your water soluble stabilizer is very important. Number 13 is optional. If you're doing a lady unicorn, you can stitch on the eyelashes. If you're doing a male unicorn, you can skip this step. Step number 14, stitch out the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Step number 15, stitch the eye color. Step number 16, stitch the eye twinkle. Step number 18 is the inner ear. Okay, we are getting ready for step 19. This is the final tack down stitch, but I need to do a couple things before I do that step. Number one is I'm going to remove this excess water soluble stabilizer from the outside edge. You can leave the inner stuff on if you want, or remove it at this time. Just make sure if you're removing it right now that you take extra care to not pull your whole design out of your hoop. So I'm using one hand to hold down the design and the other hand to rip the excess stabilizer off. I am going to leave the main body on just because I do not want to rip this out of the hoop. Now we're working with Minky. Remember, Minky goes in one direction. So before I lay that down, I need to make sure that it's going in the correct direction. The pretty sides go together in the correct direction. And I'm just going to use a few pieces of Scotch tape to help hold this in place while it stitches this final outline. Okay, back to the machine. Okay, step number 20 listed in your tutorial is actually a little tiny star, and it's right here at the foot of the animal. That is not something that is stitched out. That is a stop point so that your needle and foot do not go back to the center of your design. You do not need to stitch this step. Go ahead and remove your hoop from your machine and pop your design out and remove all of the tearaway stabilizer. Okay, perfect. Now I am going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut all the way around here. Now where the opening is right here, you want to leave a flap. Okay, so you're going to cut around this just like that, leaving that flap so that we can sew that together. If you cut all the way up to the placement stitch line, you are going to have issues closing your stuffed animal. So make sure you leave a little bit of a flap so you can tuck that back inside and sew the edges up clean. You want to leave probably at least 1/4 of an inch around your material. Any more than that, it's going to seem really bulky. almost done. All right, perfect. So here's that little flap. I'm just gonna clean this up just a tad bit more. Now I don't need this flap that big, so I'm just gonna trim a little bit more off of that. You want maybe a 1/2 inch. And then you're gonna cut your end pieces at an angle so that it folds nicely towards the inside. Okay, now I'm gonna grab my dowel rod. We are gonna turn this unicorn inside out. So the easiest way to do this, no matter what size stuffy that you're working on, is to come here at the top, and you're gonna make like a little tiny pocket here, just like that. Take your dowel rod, or you can use a pencil, but make sure that you use the eraser end, and you're gonna stick that in that little hole, okay? Then you're just gonna shimmy the fabric back and forth until it comes out your hole, and then keep shimmying it back and forth, and it comes off so easy, just like that. Okay, now I'm just going to use my dowel rod on the inside to go ahead and poke out the ears and the hands and the other foot, and make sure we get them all in the right position. Make sure that you don't poke too hard and blow through the seam of the design. Then you'll have some extra stitching to repair. Okay, almost finished. Let's get this little foot out. All right, great. We have our little unicorn all turned right side out. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this extra water-soluble stabilizer. Sometimes if it's really difficult to get it out of the tiny little spaces, you may need to use some tweezers or hemostats, whatever you have on hand. If you don't have either one of those, you can be really careful and use the edge of your scissors. You just got to make sure that you don't poke through the design. Usually a fingernail does it though. All right. Now it's time for that fur. It's always a fun part, seeing how this turned out. Awesome. So here is another little tidbit. If you have a fur like this, and you can see it's kind of sucked into the satin stitching here, all you have to do is use a set of tweezers or the end of your scissors. I'm going to get an even smaller pair here, and just lightly pull the fur out, just like this. So you're just pulling that fur out of the satin stitching. Just a little bit of pressure and a little bit of back and forth, and the fuzz comes right out. And it doesn't have to be all of the strands. I just like it to be a little bit more fuzzy at the ends here. And you can see up close where it's kind of sucked in. All right, that's perfect, okay? Sometimes after you're done, you might need to do a little bit of fur trimming around your applique pieces or around the top of the head, and you'll just have to use personal preference on that, so that it depends on the pile of your fur, how high it is. So I'm just going to pull some extra fur out around that horn. Perfect. That is exactly how I want it. All right, so now that we have all the stabilizer removed, now it's time to stuff our animal. Wow, this project was so easy. I hope that you now feel at ease making a stuffed animal all in your embroidery machine. Head over to Ohana Applique Designs to purchase this stuffy design or any other of their wonderful designs. I'll put a link down in the description for their website. This completed stuffy animal will be available for purchase in my Etsy shop, Sewing for Madison. I'll put a link for that below as well. Sneak peek time. Here is the next stuffed animal we're going to be working on next in our stuffed animal series. This is a multi-hoop stuffed animal. So stay tuned. Make sure you smash that like button and you subscribe to my channel. And next time, I'll see you. Happy crafting!